Hello everyone! Nintendo has released a lot of games over the last 40 years, almost too many to count. And with over 4,000 titles currently available on the Nintendo Switch, a good number of those come from indie developers. Many of them available at a fraction of the cost of mainline titles and still provide hours of entertainment. So today, I thought I would talk about some of my favorites over the last few years. Mind you, I haven't played everything that's considered good or popular, and there are a few more challenging games I thought were great, but I didn't get far enough into to feel comfortable ranking them. I'm looking at you, Hollow Knight. And you too, Cuphead. So with all that being said, welcome to Nintendo Forever, and here are my top 9 indie games played on the Nintendo Switch. Number 9. Mark of the Ninja Remastered. When I was in my 20s, I was a huge fan of the Tenchu games for PlayStation, so when I learned of a 2D stealth ninja game, I was intrigued, but also skeptical. I wondered, with all the limitations of a 2D platformer, just how good could a ninja game really be? Turns out, pretty great. The game gives you a fair amount of abilities as you progress, and with multiple paths to take, inside vents or on rooftops, there's always a choice on how to approach your target. The animation is gorgeous and provides full animation cutscenes and real voice dialogue. And the game makes it pretty easy to keep track of where you are visibly vulnerable to enemies. There's also a new game plus that lets you replay the levels with most of your stealth abilities but limited weapons, forcing you to be extra stealthy. I love stealth games and honestly prefer 2D over 3D, so this game was really satisfying for me. The only reason it's so far down on the list is because the concept of the game is pretty straightforward, and in my opinion a lot of the games on this list are truly innovative and imaginative. Number 8. Hue. Hue holds a special place in my eyes since it's one of the first indie platformers I fell in love with on the Switch. It has a beautiful, albeit slightly cliché art style making use of vibrant colors behind black silhouette, and a clever game mechanic that involves changing the color of the background to make objects, obstacles, or doors appear or disappear depending on their own color. The game uses this feature to create thoughtful puzzles and platform challenges. And it eases you into this by introducing one color at a time so as not to overwhelm you too early in the game. However, the story doesn't exactly make a lot of sense and is mostly told through letters from Hue's mother. Fortunately, these letters are read out loud in her voice while the player can still move, so it never feels like it slows down gameplay. It's a relatively short game that left me wanting more, never feeling like the mechanics were overused or that the creative themes overstayed its welcome. It is highly recommended for anyone seeking a unique platformer with a relaxing pace. Number 7. Shady Part of Me. This game took me by surprise with its innovative way of merging both 2D and 3D gameplay, something I haven't really seen prior or since, at least not done well. You play as both a girl and her shadow, getting them to move cooperatively through the stages. The girl moves in 3D and is afraid to be in direct light, while her shadow can only progress if there's shaded platforms to traverse on, meaning that you will have to switch between the two frequently to reach your goal. This mechanic also lends itself to the emotional core of the story, as the girl spends most of the game talking at odds with her shadow as she struggles with her mental illness. The game has a beautifully surreal atmosphere with a watercolor aesthetic and a muted color palette that helps to bring the world to life. It's often been said that the girl's voice is kind of annoying, but truth is it never bothered me, and I enjoyed losing myself in this adventure and have considered replaying it sometime soon. Number 6. Creaks. Ever wondered what it would be like to crawl through a hole in your bedroom wall and travel to an underground world full of unusual monsters who turn into furniture in the light? If you answered yes, then this puzzle platformer might be right for you, though you might want to consider an antipsychotic while you're at it. Just kidding. In this game, you'll progress through almost 60 levels of increasingly elaborate challenges while observing and even helping the odd bird-like people inhabiting this bizarre world as they fight to stop a mysterious giant creature from attacking their home. The game provides a uniquely hand-drawn art style and careful attention to detail that gives the world a truly bizarre and lived-in feel. And the periodic cutscenes of the bird creatures and their struggles are charming, humorous, and even endearing at times. The ending drags out a little bit for the sake of the story, and at times I found it tedious with all the backtracking in the final moments, but it still didn't take away from my overall enjoyment or love of the game. Number 5. Time Spinner. Starting as a Kickstarter project back in 2014, this game quickly became so intricate in its development that it wasn't released until 2018. Heavily inspired by the structure and art style of Castlevania games, this action platformer follows the adventures of a young time messenger as she attempts to save her world. The main mechanics of the game have you using the ability to travel between time periods and stopping time for brief moments. Along with a wide variety of weapons and familiars that you can equip, allows you to customize your experience greatly. Honestly, the ability to time travel in this game always seemed underutilized, but I can only imagine how difficult it would be to incorporate such a mechanic into a game in the first place. But the time stop feature comes in handy not only for combat, for helping you to reach new areas. The story in this game is quite involved and even a bit confusing at times, but has very compelling gameplay with multiple side quest options and plenty of interesting characters to interact with. It also has some rather entertaining and oftentimes progressive conversation with NPCs, which I actually enjoyed. It's not something that you often see in mainline titles, so another advantage to being a small indie project. The game uses a gorgeous pixel art style and has a wide variety of environments, enemies, and challenging bosses. And with a sequel officially on the horizon, this game is a must for Metroidvania fans and is sure to give us plenty more lore and adventures in the coming years. Number 4. Ghost 1.0. This is a game that isn't even the slightest bit embarrassed to acknowledge its inspirations from Metroid, but it still succeeds to bring something new to the table. You play as Ghost, a consciousness that can slip in and out of robots' bodies to control them, a mechanic that can be used a fair amount to help you progress through the game. It even provides a whole section of the game that is almost exclusively dependent on this feature, forcing you to use strategy and stealth to progress, which is a welcome change to gameplay. As is typical with Metroidvania games, there are plenty of weapons and accessories to collect and choose from, and you can buy new upgrades via the standard skill tree to help you along the way. She is also in contact with 2 techies that help her remotely, one of which seems to be trying really hard to sound like Samuel L. Jackson. They provide a great amount of assistance, and they have their own skills that can be upgraded as the game progresses. They also provide a fair amount of amusement and speculation as to the nature of Ghost as the story unfolds. At first I was a little bit concerned about the controls since it operates as a twin-stick shooter, but actually I got used to it pretty early on and found that it came in handy for allowing Ghost to shoot behind herself while still running. With a great sense of humor, Ghost 1.0 is never afraid to point out the ironies and idiosyncrasies that are common in such games, bordering on self-parody. Heck, even the trailer points out how humorous the game is supposed to be. Yet it does this with a fair amount of charm and still manages to be a credit to the genre. Number 3. Unbound Worlds Apart. As we enter the top 3, it's safe to say that all of these games left quite an impression on me. Worlds Apart is a gorgeous and at times brutally challenging platformer. The main game mechanic allows you to create a portal around you that crosses into another dimension of sorts, giving you an alternate environment from the one around you. And every area changes the properties of this feature. In some levels, the alternate dimension reverses gravity, while others changes the attributes of some of the enemies or platforms. and you will have to switch back and forth with almost perfect precision to get past the many obstacles in the game. I've loved games like this ever since playing Fractured Soul on the 3DS, and honestly they don't come much better than this. The story is told through the many wondrous characters you encounter throughout the game, and the world is dark and hauntingly beautiful. The one thing I should note is that you will die. A lot. The difficulty level in this game spikes hard at times and forces you to make very tight and very quick jumps and changes between worlds. But thankfully the checkpoints are frequent, so I never really experienced the frustration of replaying long sections over and over. But this game is definitely not for the faint-hearted or those looking for a more casual gameplay experience. Even so, I found my experience with this game to be absolutely amazing and hope that we might still see a sequel to it sometime in the future. Number 2. SteamWorld Heist. What do you get when you take a bunch of steam-powered robots, turn them into space pirates, and throw them into a universe heavily inspired by the show Firefly? The best game in the SteamWorld franchise to date. SteamWorld Heist is a turn-based tactical shooter that never ceases to captivate with its creative character design and witty banter. Captain Piper Faraday sets off with a crew to make the galaxy safe for steambots by boarding enemy ships, looting them, and shooting anything that gets in their way. You even meet additional bots along the way to join the crew. Every crew member has its own distinct design and personality, and each has a unique skill set to bring to the table. This, combined with over 100 different weapons and items to equip, make it really easy to customize your boarding parties. In fact, you'll have so many weapons and items to choose from that it becomes slightly frustrating given that you can never really increase the amount of items each bot can carry at one time. And the game seems to have this thing about collecting hats. I don't know what it is about the hats. The levels are randomly generated, and surprisingly this works pretty well. I find most random level designs to be problematic, but I never really encountered any issues with this feature, and it has made replaying levels more enjoyable. And I don't usually talk about the music too much when reviewing games, but this game has an amazing soundtrack. Over a dozen songs recorded by the band Steam Powered Giraffe, and the music vibe fits perfectly with the atmosphere of the game. This game has provided me with over 30 hours of enjoyment and is highly recommended for anyone who likes robots and space pirates. Number 1. Ender Lilies, Quietus of the Night. Ender Lilies is an absolutely breathtaking action-adventure platformer with a dark and haunting story. The game follows Lily, the last surviving priestess of her land, which has been devastated by a blight that has corrupted everyone she loves and has turned them into tormented undead. Lily's power allows her to purify those affected by the blight and cleanse their souls, at which point they join Lily and aid her on her journey, giving her new attacks and abilities that help her progress through the dark ruins of her home. The art style is simply wonderful, and its beautiful music helps set the mood and teleports you into this mysterious world. The map is quite large and a little intimidating at times, with lots of branching paths, many of which aren't accessible until after you gain special abilities. It is sometimes a challenge to figure out where to go next. But then, that's half the fun of these games, right? Every area looks distinctly different and is inhabited by bizarre and treacherous creatures, many of which aren't found in any other area. The bosses can be pretty tough, and some of them took me several days to get past, but the game gives you a wide variety of choices for attack, giving you lots of options for strategy. The game can last between 12 and 25 hours depending on how much you struggle with the bosses and how determined you are to collect everything. I think I myself have put over 30 hours into the game. Don't judge. Ender Lilies is one of the most elaborate and involved 2D platformers I've ever played, and it's worth every moment I've spent on it. In fact, I love this game so much that when it was done, I went through a bit of post-completion depression, looking for another similar game to fill the void, but sadly nothing quite satisfied me in the same way. Maybe we will get lucky and they'll still make a sequel someday. Hey, we can dream, can't we? Well, there you have it, my top 9 favorite indie games played on the Switch. If you liked this video, feel free to give it a thumbs up and subscribe. And if you're interested in joining our new Discord group where people can talk about any and all things Nintendo, there's a link in the description below. And as always, take care and see you next time.